All right. Hey guys, welcome back to another game development live stream. I'm Geoff from Lost Decade Games. A couple things before we get started. First, if you like what you see here, please check out our game. It's called A Wizard's Lizard. You can get it on Steam or DRM free for PC, Mac, and Linux at wizardslizard.com. Also, Matt is not with us today, so I will be manning the chat all by myself. He's on vacation in Illinois, so if you have any questions, I will try to get to them, but I don't always see the chat messages right away, so bear with me on that front. The next thing is I value your feedback, so if you have any thoughts on the live stream, head over to forum.lostdecadegames.com and just let me know what you think, if there's anything you'd like to see differently or whatever, or if you just want to chat with our great community. All right, something that I started doing for this week was I made a list of things that I could potentially work on the stream. Some of them we may get to and some of them we might not get to. But I will go over really quickly what some of those things might be. One is to add a spawn cloud to the spawn points as a warning signal. It doesn't necessarily have to be a cloud, but my head kind of lives in The Legend of Zelda sometimes, so that's probably a good first pass at some kind of visual warning when things are spawning. Creating a proximity spawner using trigger colliders. This is an idea I had typically when I've done kind of proximity-based stuff before. I would use like a quad tree, and then I would have the enemies look up all the entities within a certain radius from them using the quad tree, and then if any of them were players or hostiles, it would use that. I don't know exactly how that works in Unity necessarily, but I had this idea of maybe using a large circle collider to trigger collider to detect things in range. So maybe we'll try that. I made a plant monster over the weekend that shoots stuff, so maybe we can create plant spawners for that and have it aim at the player and deal damage when it collides with the player. There's also some map generation stuff we might be able to do, adding start and room metadata to the maps. Something else I've been wanting to do is add a trigger or add a function to only get triggers within a certain subset of a sprite tile map. So by default, sprite tile will return triggers for any location on the map, and I want to be able to populate the rooms on a room by room basis, and so I want to be able to get triggers based on just the current room. Let's see. The other way to do that maybe would be by just dealing with the room data in a chunk outside of the main map beforehand. I've recently been messing with the map stuff, so I wanted to add warp zones back into the map generation and then mechanisms back into the map generation. Mechanisms were basically like buttons and doors and stuff like that. So mechanical stuff. So before we get started, we'll check in on chat. Okay. Apparently I'm not logged into Twitch, so it's trying to make me sign up. Well, for that, we'll use handy dandy 1Password. And I'll just log into Twitch real quick. Okay, there we go. I'm all logged in. So let's get back to the stream. Okay. So that was kind of the list of things that I was thinking about working on today. I can also kind of go through and talk about some of the other stuff I did. Kind of been working on this prototype a lot. Let's mute that audio. Over the past week, you can see actually on a different stream, I was working on that fade in text or level name, and I actually finally got that working, so pretty happy about that. I started working on these plant monsters, which you can see right here, which just shoot skulls at the player. Or not at the player, sorry. Right now they just shoot them straight down. That's one of the things maybe we'll work on today, is kind of getting that guy to aim at the player and make that a little more interesting. The other thing is I added these power-ups, so you can increase your max health and also regenerate health. And also there's a mana statistic where you can increase your maximum mana and then also restore mana. And then we also had the fireballs before, but they were now they're in a wand form, which there's one. I'm going to grab this wand and then I can shoot fireballs all day long. A lot of fun. Except for now I'm out of mana, so I can't anymore. And our slimes are going all kinds of diagonal on me. Okay. So I think the first thing maybe we'll do is try and add a spawn warning, maybe, to our spawners. Because right now they just pop the monsters back into the world whenever they want. And, you know, if you're standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, you're going to take some cheap damage, and nobody likes that, as we know. So I think what we'll do here is we can see that the way that this particular spawn point works is that it essentially has a reference to the thing that it spawned right here. And then it listens for the death of that thing, and it won't spawn anything else until the child has died. And as soon as the cooldown is up, it'll spawn something again. But what we want to do is we want to basically have a warning time so that the player knows what's going to happen. So let's see. We have cooldown remaining. So I think what we want to do maybe is have a float here that's going to say how long the warning is before it spawns. So maybe we'll do maybe 2 seconds for now, just for fun. The other thing we want to do is we want to at least start the cooldown remaining with the warning time. So basically what'll happen here is that when the thing starts up, actually I like to do this in start rather than awake. I don't know exactly why, but it seems like a good idea to me. Oh, something else that I did recently that I want to talk about maybe later is blend trees for 2D animation. There's all kinds of cool stuff I've been learning about Unity lately, so I always forget to talk about those things. Maybe I'll talk about it on Lostcast as well, and how awesome it is, and how it's greatly simplified the animation states, especially in a game like this where there's, you know, top down, left, right kind of frames for each character, and then, you know, walking, not walking, attacking, pane frames, and all that good stuff. Okay, so we're going to add one more thing. I think we're going to add a private bool here called warned, which is going to be false. And we're going to basically use that to throw our warning. So if not warned, and cooldown remaining is less than or equal to the warning time, then we will set warned is equal to true. And then here, we want to show, or visualize spawning. So this is kind of a warning to everything else that something's going to happen. So first of all, let's go into paint.net, and this is going to be some blart right here, which is Blair art. Matt usually does the graphics for our games, and you're about to see why. Although I do have my great DB16 palette. So first, let's see. Let's use white, or some version of white, and we'll create a little spawn cloud thing here. It's like a happy little spawn cloud. Right over here. This is where it lives. That's too small. Oh wait, this is way too big of a canvas, isn't it? Yeah, let's do new. Let's make this more like 80 by 80. That's probably better. Yes, okay. And then we'll just get rid of that, and then we'll zoom in a little bit. I was wondering why that felt so large. Okay. Great. So we're going to go back to our paintbrush, and let's see, more like 10. That's fine. So now we're going to create our spawn cloud again. Doesn't look very much like a cloud, does it? No. Looks like a white blob of something. But that's okay. Placeholder graphics. And then we'll just kind of give it an outline. Like that. And then, we'll give it some kind of like little cloud appearances. Yeah, there we go. Awesome. Let's go to this guy. Don't save. All right, so we're going to save this in sprites as cloud.png. That's great. So now this should be all ready to go in Unity. So we'll go back to this. We'll say images. And sprites. And so there it is, cloud. So first, let's just go change this pixels per unit to 80, which is what we've been using. This is actually a single sprite, so we really don't need to do anything further there. We'll just be able to use that guy. Next, we'll go into our prefabs. So we already have a blue slime spawner prefab. And we're going to add, so we already have this component, spawn point. I think what we'll want to do maybe is have a game object in here. Public game object. And we'll call this warning sprite. And then, so let's put this guy in here. Oops. And then we're going to add a child, an empty child here, and we're going to give it a sprite renderer. And if I haven't talked about it before, I have a couple layers here, tall objects and flat objects that exist in the world. And flat objects are like, rugs or things that exist solely on the floor. I may have talked about this before. And tall objects, which are taller, kind of extend past the floor. And we also, for now, are using our sprites lit material, which kind of allows us to light things. And let's find our cloud. There it is. Great. So there's our spawn cloud. It's actually a child of the spawner. And so we'll call this cloud. And then what we're going to do actually is we're going to drag this cloud to the warning sprite. And first of all, we're going to set this to be disabled. Also, these things are going to be static, so we're also going to make the cloud static. And the cloud's going to have a 0, 0. Yep. And so what we can do here first is just say warning sprite dot set active true when it's about to spawn, and then once it does spawn, we'll set it to false. And we'll probably do a little bit more with it after that. Let's see who's in chat. Oh, I gotta help people. Thanks for joining. Again, Matt's not here to man chat, so if you have any questions, I will get to it at some point when I check the chat. Okay, so let's see. We've got that working, so let's just see if that's going to do what we want to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go back into our, level data, and I'm going to comment out everything but the slime spawners, just so we can test those guys out. Although I actually want the wand as well, so maybe we'll add that one back in just so I can kill them. Oh, actually the first thing I need to do is apply this to the blue slime spawner, and I like to zero these guys out, and then we can get rid of this guy for now. Okay. Oh, hey, that worked out pretty well. Let's actually first do this. Go in here and change this cooldown to 5 seconds. Oops, that's not the right button. So you can kind of see when the map loads up, you've got these little spawn clouds, and they turn into to slimes. So what we'll do is we will kill this guy, bam, with fireball. And we'll wait 5 seconds, and he should be spawning right about here. Okay, he did. But, oh, I think went wrong. We never reset the warned variable. So in the spawn point code right here, we actually need to set warned is equal to false so that it will warn again later. So looks like it's warning over and over again. So what we need to do here is also say if warned and child is equal to null, and cooldown remaining is greater than less than warning. There we go. Should work for reals this time. Let's see. Great. So that went away, and then we'll go find one of these guys real quick, and we'll kill that guy. Bam. And then he should be respawning. There he goes. 2 seconds, and then there's a guy. Great. So that looks pretty bad. I mean, aside from the art. So I also created, maybe last time we saw this, but I created this static class called effects, and the static class is just kind of a wrapper for lean tween effects that I use in the game for like hovering or showing things or disappearing or whatever. So a couple things I want to do here is I actually wanted to use this zoom disappear, but I want to have it not always destroy stuff. So LT desker is equal to desk. Actually, I guess I can just do this. I can just pass destroy to this destroy. Great. So basically what's happening here is it's fading out the sprite, and then when it's done tweening the alpha, it'll destroy it, but I don't always want that to happen. So in this case, I just want it to fade out, and I don't want it to actually be destroyed. I think we want it to go more like 0 opacity there. Although we're going to need to reset the opacity later, which is fine. Okay, so back at our spawn point here, say warning sprite that's selected is true, and then we'll say effects dot set sprite alpha, and then we'll pass in the warning sprite, give it an alpha of 1, and then we also want to say effects dot squishy appear warning sprite, and then when you remove it, actually we don't want to set active false right away. I guess what we can do is just say effects dot zoom disappear warning sprite. Theoretically, we want to like remove that from Unity's hierarchy, so we may need like a callback there, or maybe just a flag telling him or telling us that it should be deactivated instead of being destroyed. Let's see if that looks the way we want to, at least, though. Okay, so that looks kind of good. Kill that guy. Okay. Oh. Interesting. We have the errors. Oh, right, because I destroyed it here. What I really wanted to do is pass in 0.5 for the duration, and then false for destruction. Then hopefully that will work this time. So we got that. Kill that guy. There it goes. Very nice. Kill him again. Those aren't maybe the final effects that we'll use for those guys, but it's good enough for now. Let's check on chat. Okay. Now I might want something less kind of bouncy for those guys, the clouds. Maybe they're more of like a more of an alpha fade, I guess. So maybe for zoom disappear, I don't worry about that, but we could also say, you know, to do for later. When not destroying an object, use set active is equal to false, or passing in false. Maybe. We'll see. Hesitant to do that kind of stuff sometimes just because, you know, this is actually a case where, like, you know, the fact that we baked the destruction into this visualization method means that, you know, in this particular case we have to have a variable to override it because we don't want it to be destroyed. So And let's go check in. Let's add all those. I'll say add cloud sprite to spawn points as a warning, as a visual warning. Great. Okie doke. So we can go into our list here. We can cross this guy off. We also have these plant monsters. And I kind of wanted to create a spawner for them as well. So let's first just drag this spawner right here, the blue slime spawner, and we will duplicate it. And we'll call it plant spawner. And basically we're going to keep all this stuff the same except for we are going to make it use monsters plant. And we'll make the cooldown like, maybe like this one's 15 seconds, and then we'll go back to these ones of like 60 seconds. And then we'll make that a prefab. And we'll zero those guys out. Then we can get rid of these two things, delete those, and then we'll go back into our level data, and we'll just copy that and change that to plant spawner. Is that what we called it? Yeah, plant spawner. And we'll kill the plants. And then we'll wait 15 seconds. And it should come back. Should spawn right here in this corner. Oh, that got hit. And there it is. Yay, it's a plant. Let's kill it again. Something else I did was I worked on the pain animations and the grace visualization. So you can see when I get hit, he kind of does a pain frame, and also his sprite flashes. And if I take too many hits, the game is over. Oh no. We have some warnings here. Stuff being tweened after it's being destroyed. I need to go back and clean those up. Probably won't worry about that right now. That's boring work. Okay, great. So we did that. We created plant spawners as well. So let's go back in here. Oops. Oh, I guess everything else is new. Awesome. That's two things down from our list already. That's good. We'll check in with chat very quickly. Oops. I accidentally started GitHub. That's not really what I meant to do. Okay. Let's go back to our list. See. Plant monster should aim projectiles at the player. Proximity spawner. Using trigger colliders. Plant monster deals damage when colliding with player. Well, we already have that working, so maybe we'll just fix that up. Because that already works with our slimes. So, as you can see, we don't take any damage by colliding with that guy. Still haven't completely fixed the seams issue with lighting and the tiles, but I'm going to figure that out soon. So I do take damage when I get hit by the slimes, so that's good. So let's just go take a look at how that's implemented. Basically, the blue slime has a child object, which is a hazardous thing, collider, to the player. And the reason it's separate is because the blue slime itself has colliders on it that collide with the walls. And it's tricky to kind of get those things to work in harmony on the same entity. So what we're going to do is do the same thing with the plant, which is drag it up here, and then we'll create empty prefab here, and we'll look at this guy's reference. Basically just needs a circle collider, which is a trigger, and then a hazard script, which says how much damage it does, and then it needs to be a monster hazards layer. So we're going to add the circle collider. And this will be the circle collider for, you know, where the player takes damage when they collide with the thing. So we're going to kind of move that around a little bit. Something like that. Maybe make it just a hair smaller. That's good. And again, we want this to be a trigger because we don't want this particular thing to, you know, actually cause collisions in the world as a solid object. We want it to kind of just give us events. So we're going to call that hazard. And then we'll also give this the hazard component script that we wrote. And it's going to deal 1 damage. And it's not going to destroy itself on collision like a projectile would. And we're going to make sure this is tagged as a monster hazard. And then we're going to go back in here and apply those changes to our plant. And then 0 out these guys. And we'll delete this. And let's take a look. So now, if we walk into this guy, yep. Oh, great, we take damage. Awesome. You can also see that I worked on the animations a bunch for the plant itself. And I was kind of creating this generic, like, interval spawner script for these guys to use. And so they can have any number of projectiles. Right now they shoot 3, so they warn once with kind of that, like, you know, bouncy effect. And then they shoot 3 projectiles in a row, and then they cool down. And that's all controllable on the interval spawner script. So like 5-second intervals, 1 second of warning, spawn 3 things total. We could change that to 2. And we could also make them spawn it in more rapid succession, like 0.5. So now they'll shoot 2, but much more quickly. Wherever they are. There's one down there. 1, 2. That's kind of bumping up right against the animation though, so it doesn't look quite as good as it did before, I think. Let's see. Yeah, it's not great. I think that would need to be more like 0.75 maybe. Because I think the animation is about 500 milliseconds, so need to give it just a little bit of breathing room. There we go. That looks pretty good. Let's see. Let's check out this guy. Nice. So there we go. We have our plant monsters, and they deal damage when colliding with the player. Done. Checking it off the list. Let's see. There it is. I kind of wondered if I needed the rigid body for the plants. I don't think the plants actually have a rigid body. Now I think about it. Unlike the slimes. They do have a circle collider, though. I don't even know if they need that. Because they don't really move. They kind of just sit there and exist. But, whatever. Speaking on chat. And let's get rid of GitHub. So maybe let's work on the plant monster projectiles, either aiming right at the player or being triggered by proximity. I think there's a lot of behaviors that could potentially be leveraged with, you know, having some kind of a proximity detector. So let's maybe play with that and see how far we can get. So the basic idea, so we already have this interval spawner, so we might want maybe a different class here. Or we want to allow this class to pick up a target from somewhere. But we don't want to necessarily require a target because, you know, this script could easily be used for, you know, in a Wizard's Lizard, like the bone piles that spawn skeletons. And so in those cases, you know, they don't aim the skeletons at the player. The skeletons just kind of pop out. But first, let's mess around with like a proximity based thing. So let's go back into Unity, and I'm going to open up my playground scene, which just has, I cleaned it up a little bit, so it's got much fewer things in it. So we'll get, I guess we can keep, well, let's take the plant out for now. And I think I already have this spike swing, yeah, so I'm going to delete that too. So we just have Raga. There we go, yay. And let's create an entity. Create empty. And we're going to give this a sprite for now. Just because I want to be able to see where it is in the world. So let's give it, let's make it, oh, I don't know. Let's make it a totem. That sounds fun. How about that guy? That looks good. So we got that. And then we're going to add a circle collider 2D. And this is going to be a trigger. And we're going to make this have a pretty large radius. Large-ish. And I'm going to make this the radius that we want. You know, want it to detect the player. Or whatever. So it's a trigger, it's a collider. And let's make another script. Create script. And we're going to call this radar for now. We'll get rid of those. And then public void on, what is it called? It's on trigger enter 2D. And then it passes us a collider 2D object. And so for now, we'll just debug log we'll say detected something. Then we'll go back into this thing and we'll say radar. Well, it detected it. This thing has got some funky Z issues going on. There we go. For some reason, every once in a while, it'll spawn game objects at a -10 Z-axis, which is behind the camera almost. So now we can see that every time we get within range of that collider, it says detected something. And so there's a couple other events too. There's on trigger exit 2D, I think it's called. And so we can say debug.log something left range. I'm pretty sure it's exit. Let's see. Set to something left range. Great. I really like the collision methods here that that Unity exposes because it gives you pretty nice control. There's also one more called on trigger stay 2D, I think. And so for that we'll say it's still here. And we may not need all of these methods right now, but it's good to know that, yeah. So it's just going to spam. It's still here while I'm inside of it, and then something left range. So, let's see. What we might want to do here is have a list of things that are within the radar. Or for now, we can just, you know, create a reference. To that. So we'll say private target is equal, oh, nothing. Yeah, and then we'll say, we don't do anything here yet. And then we'll say target is equal to collider. Collider.gameObject, I think is how that works. And then when it leaves, we'll say target is equal to null. And obviously this has some problems already. One is that, you know, if you have a second thing enter the radius, it'll overwrite the first thing. So I think that what we'd like to do here is, like, you know, maintain a list of all the things that are within range, and then maybe filter them or whitelist them, blacklist them based on the type of thing that they are. So one, you know, radar component might only care about things that are tagged as players. One might only care about enemies. One might care about both. Who knows? And then we would provide some methods on here that would say, you know, something like, you know, return a game object, like nearest target or something. And then this would, you know, to do return nearest target from list of targets. So maybe we'll get that today. We'll see. It depends. That's kind of more advanced stuff, though, because it's something we won't really need until we start having more game objects on the screen. You know, for now, what we could do is just say that this type of thing only collides with the player class, and then the only thing that would ever trigger these methods will be the player. But that's good for now. Okay, so we've got that. And then let's kind of hook this up to our interval spawner for now. Well, maybe not. The nice thing about this plant script over here is that the plant animations and stuff are all kind of decoupled from the spawner. So what all the plant thing does is when it gets a warning event, it does its warning animation, and when it does a spawn event, it does its spawn animation, and then it'll reset itself. So we could pretty easily change this out to be a different kind of spawner. Thing is, though, is what we need to because of the way that the circle colliders work, we have to make them separate game objects. Oh, whoops. I should comment out my stub functions. In fact, we need to get rid of that. We don't need that for now. So back in here, let's bring in our plant monster. And then we're going to add another child to him. So he's already got a hazard, so we're going to create another thing called the radar. And we're going to give it the radar script, and we're going to give it a circle collider. And then, you know, let's make that like 3, sure, 4, why not? And that's going to be a trigger. Move that down, great. So this is going to be tagged as, we're going to call this monster hazards. Because that group, if you look in our matrix, which is in preferences, project settings, physics 2D. If you look at this matrix here, monster hazards collide with players. And so Raga is a player's, so then that's the only one that will collide with him. So once we've got that, we've got the targets, and then I can actually just make this public for now, so I can access it easily. And then you know, for the proximity spawner, we still want some kind of a cooldown. So let's do that. The first thing we can do, though, is just make it simple and dumb. So we'll go into scripts, and we'll create proximity spawner. And what we can do is we can first say radar, maybe public. So we want the radar component from the child. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here, and on this plant we have the oops, I should need to replace this. So let's get rid of the interval spawner, and then we'll add the proximity spawner, and then we'll drag this radar component down here. Great. And then we'll apply this. And then we also need to comment out that for now because the interval spawner doesn't exist. I wonder if I could create a more generic spawn class that the interval spawner and the proximity spawner could inherit from, and then that way whichever one is attached to this, it would just work. But I won't worry about that for now. Check on chat real quick. Windows 8 sucks. It's not that bad, really. Okay. Anyways. So let's create some events here in our radar that we can listen to. So we'll say public delegate void detect, or we can say enter. And public delegate, oops, exits. And then we'll create a couple events here, public event, enter on enter, and public event, exit on exit. And then we'll say if on enter is not equal to null, then we'll just call on enter. And we could theoretically call it with the targets, so maybe we'll do that. So let's change this to game object. Game object. And then we'll call enter with the target. And then we'll do the same thing here. If on exit is not equal to null, then on exit with targets. You know, I guess we could actually put the, well, I don't know. There's going to have to be some cross parent-child communication somewhere along the line, so we'll leave it like this for now. So we'll say public void awake, and then we'll say radar is equal to get component, or actually we already have radar. That already is the radar component. So we can just say radar dot on enter plus equals on radar enter. We won't worry about exit for now, just yet. We'll say public void. Actually, we can make this private. There's no reason that will be called elsewhere. Public void on radar enter. And then this is going to get passed a game object, which is going to be the thing that was detected by the radar. And what we want to do here is we want to, do something, spawn something at game object. So for now, we will just, to make sure this is working, we'll do that. And we also need the spawner component, which is what actually has the spawn methods on it. And let's just see if that actually works. Nope. Hooray for errors. All right, prefab path. So let's just say string, and then we'll go in here. Say projectiles skull. So now, yeah, every time that we enter the radius of the plant, it'll shoot a skull. So if I don't go over there, it won't shoot at all. So a couple things like we want to do is, one, we want to put a cooldown on that so it can't do that just willy-nilly. And we also want to hook up the animations as well. So we can also give this an on spawn or a spawn warning. This one's a little harder to, well, I guess we'll have to delay the spawning of the projectile. You know, first we'll want to warn and then invoke the spawn. So we want to say public delegate void. This will be warning. Then we'll create a couple more events. Warning. Public event. Spawn on spawn. So here's where we would say if on warning is not equal to null, then call on warning, and then we're going to say invoke spawn after, let's say, I don't know, 2 seconds. 1 second, that's fine. And then we'll just move this guy. Down here. And this is also where we're going to say if on spawn is not equal to null, then call on spawn. And then here we'll just change this to be proximity spawner. And proximity spawner equals get component proximity spawner. And then actually we can probably just give us a more generic name. So we can reuse some of this code. Great. Let's make sure. I think I might have spelled, no, proximity. Yeah, I did spell that wrong. Oops, we probably didn't want to do that. So I'm going to prefix these because apparently there's a global namespace conflict with my other spawner, which makes sense because these delegates are kind of declared out here. Maybe I'll figure out a better way to do that as I get better with Unity. Pawner. There we go. Is that all of our errors taken care of? Looks like it is. Nice. So now whenever I enter, it'll warn and then shoot. Warn, shoot. If I come in and out a lot, it'll get really crazy. Start barfing skulls all over the place. So we want to add a cooldown probably. Let's check it on chat. Hey guys, looks like we got some new people in chat. Thanks for the nice words about the podcast. We love doing the podcast, so glad that it's helpful. If you haven't heard of our podcast, it's called Lost Cast, and it's a weekly show where Matt and I talk about all kinds of random indie game dev stuff. Some of it's very technical, some of it's more business and marketing, and some of it's just rambling about whatever. So you can check that out at lostdecadegames.com/lostcast. So let's see. What we want to do now is give this thing a cooldown maybe, where it can only spawn something, every so often. So proximity spawner, let's say public cooldown is equal to false. We'll say cooldown duration is equal to 5 seconds. Sure. I'm going to try a little bit of a different method here. I'm going to use invokes instead of just counting down the timer myself. So if you look at interval spawner, I'm using, I'm keeping track of the elapsed and then doing stuff there. But in this case, I think I'm going to try using the invoke syntax, which is basically, if you're familiar with JavaScript, it's basically like a set timeout. So on the radar enter, once we've warned, we can say cooldown equals true, and then we can invoke reset cooldown in cooldown duration seconds, and then we'll just create a private function down here called reset cooldown, and then we'll just say cooldown is equal to false, and then if at this point cooldown is true, then we're just going to return. So even if something enters our field and we're on cooldown, then we won't care. So let's make it more like 10 just to make sure we know what's going on. It also might help if I declared types. It's not like JavaScript. Then we'll make that a float. There we go. Much better. So enter, it shoots at me. Nope, nothing. Maybe soon. There it goes. So it can still hurt me, but it's not going to shoot at me. Ideally, we'd also set this up so that I wouldn't have to like exit and come back in for it to trigger. Theoretically, it should work by, if I'm just standing here every so often, it'll say, hey, you're still here. I'm going to shoot at you. So that's like a nice proximity detection. Someone in chat is talking about modulus, temporal differential. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but are we talking about the cooldown or the interval at which things spawn? Okay, so the next thing maybe we want to do is see if there's a unity vector aim at function. Vector 2, normalize, move towards, points towards a current target. I don't want to move towards it, I just want to aim at it. I guess I can just, what's the distance to float? I guess I can just subtract them and then use that. So what we want to do right here is we want to say vector, so this is actually going to be vector 3. And it's going to be target position. This is going to be the radar dot target transform dot position. Oops. And then we're going to say vector 3 aim is equal to r transform dot position, or no, the target position minus r transform dot position. Let's see, debug dot log, and let's see if that's aim dot x plus aim dot y. Let's see if that looks like what we're looking for here. We're probably going to want to normalize that too, though. But let's first make sure that it's actually giving us some of the values that we want. Oh, great. Not set to reference. Oh, I think I left too early. Three and -1. That looks about right. So let's just say, I think normalize is a function. Let's find out vector. I guess this would be vector 3. Normalized returns this vector. Okay. There we go. So normalize is what we want. So then down here we can just say aim.x and aim.y. And we'll see what that looks like. Who thinks it's going to work? Oh, it does. Look at that. Awesome. Oh, my cooldown's too long for proper testing. So let's go back in here and let's change this plant to have a cooldown of like 3 seconds. Let's go up here. He'll shoot at me there. Down here. Nice. Oops. There's probably what we want to do is we probably want to cache the aim vector, right? So let's say private vector 3 aim, and then all we really want to do is in here when it detects something, we just want to say that the aim vector is equal to that, and then we want to normalize the aim vector, and then here we'll just spawn it. And so now this won't care if the target is actually still in range. Basically what will happen is it'll lock on right before it spawns. So in the warning phase, the enemy will basically lock on to the player. And this is actually more of what we want anyway, because then, you know, if I move down here, it shoots at where I was. So it's kind of a dumb enemy, but that's okay. It's not too dumb. Because if it detects you, it'll still shoot right at you, but if you're walking by, we can adjust the threshold of that stuff too, so that, maybe adjust the warning time so it's a little bit faster. Do we not have a variable? So let's come in here and say float warning is equal to 1f. And then in here, for this particular guy, we'll just change it to 0.5 for now and just see what that feels like. So it's still a pretty decent lag time between the time that he detects me and then when he shoots me, but that might be okay. I wonder what happens if we change that even lower, like 0.1. It'll probably mess with our visualizations. Yep. I think this really needs to be more like 0.5. Oops. Anyways, that's, kind of a game balance feel tweak thing. Right now we're just kind of trying to make the mechanics feel pretty good. Get the basic behaviors in there. Oh, interesting. Cooldown even easing. That's an interesting idea. I'd have to think about that. I don't know too much about what you're talking about, but it sounds pretty interesting. Someone in chat is talking about cooldown easing, which sounds pretty interesting. So I think maybe what we'll try to do, first let me check this stuff in. Let's see. So we've got plant prefab, and then plant script, and the proximity spawner, and the radar. It's all new stuff. Whoops. Add radar and proximity spawner components. And use in plant. Great. All right, let's see. The next thing maybe we want to do is have it fire even when things are still in range. So what we could do is we could move this to a different function called lock on. And then here we'll call lock on. Probably want to call game object. And we're basically going to mirror this API. We're going to call it stay, game object, and then actually let's copy this whole thing. Might be a better way to go about this with the Unity components, but we'll see. We're going to make this on trigger stay. A lot of this is just kind of experimenting on my part, figuring out what works and what doesn't, and what might be done in better ways. So on stay target, and then we'll just create another event here. Public event stay, on stay, and then back in our proximity spawner, we'll just say radar dot on stay plus equals on stay on radar stay. I like to prefix some of this stuff so that I can have a better understanding of what, you know, if there's multiple radars or multiple things with similar APIs being listened to, it helps. So game object, and then we'll say lock on game object. So that's going to fire a lot, but it shouldn't do anything if the thing is cooling down. So hopefully that'll give us the effect we want at the moment, which is that there are errors. On radar stay, what? Does not exist in the current context. It doesn't? Oh, might help if I spelled radar correctly. Thank you, Unity, for pointing out my spelling mistakes. Great, so here we go. Locks on, attacks me, and now I'm going to stay within the radius. Oh, locks on again after 3 seconds. Shoots me some more. Awesome. And then if I leave, it doesn't do anything. And if I come back in, it'll try and shoot me again. And if I just pass through, you know, it'll completely miss me because it's dumb. But that's okay. It's just a plant. It doesn't need any super intelligent AI. All right. I forgot to remove this from my list. Let's see. Plant monsters should aim projectiles at player. Done. Create proximity spawner using trigger colliders. Done. Look at that. I think we knocked out all of the plant enemy related stuff I wanted to do in almost an hour and a half. So that's pretty good. Pretty good. I probably won't get started on this map stuff just because, you know, I've only got about 10 minutes left on the stream, and that's going to take a while to get into. But you can also join me next week where I will get into that map stuff maybe, or maybe I'll do something else. We'll see. We will see. I'll probably be working on this code over the course of the next week as well. That's typically what I do is I'll kind of write things once in a very kind of almost haphazardly way, and then I'll come back and refine it. You know, because the initial result I really want is just to see it kind of working the way I want to in the world. And then if there's ways I can consolidate stuff, you know, like if there's a better way than having this radar be a sub-object of the plant. I kind of feel like that's maybe the best way to do it now, just because, you know, I don't want the circle colliders to overlap. You know, because if this guy doesn't actually have any rigid body, like he doesn't really interact with the world, like the slimes do, but still, you could see how we could have a proximity spawner that did move around the world. You know, we could attach that behavior to the slime, and then you'd have a roving turret. Let's see. So let's just zero this guy out. I think I put this guy at -1 sometimes. Or I like to put these guys at -1. Just because the floor is at 0. Some of these things are older. So now if we go back to our main scene, where we are spawning a bunch of these plants. Ow. Nice. Now the plants shoot at me, which is, much more interesting. Here's a scenario that I actually kind of anticipated would happen, but I don't know how to quell it right now. I guess I could do like a some kind of line drawing, like a cast array, and see if there's anything between, if there's a wall between the plant and the player along the trajectory of the skull, then it just won't fire. Because you can see the plant's trying to attack me through the wall, even though there's no way that it can, because this circle, circle range extends this far, essentially. That's pretty fun, though. Oh, game over. All right, let's check in on the chat. Probably going to wrap it up pretty quick here. If anybody has any questions or feedback on the stream, I'll be happy to hang around for a few minutes and answer any questions. Once again, we'll do this again next week at 11:30 a.m. PDT, Pacific Daylight Time. Next week, we might be working on some more map generation stuff, so you can kind of see what I've been working on here, which is that there are these rooms that kind of get pieced together, and they have different stuff inside, and the connections between the room is, kind of draws a path, and then it populates the rooms with enemies and, other kind of geometry, like this kind of center thing here, and then some rooms are empty, and some rooms have other things inside them, which we're not seeing yet. But I promise that it's there. Oops. Still have some collision issues with some of the projectiles. This is actually a problem with AWL to begin with, where, if you're up against a wall and you're shooting a projectile, it immediately collides with the wall sometimes. So I'll probably write some code at some point that will, basically say, let's look at the angle of the collision, and if it's kind of a, perpendicular angle, then don't destroy, just slide along the wall, really, because what we want is that if you're like moving this way, you're colliding with the top of the wall, we don't want you to just disappear. We want it to slide. But if you hit a wall straight on like that, head on, we want that projectile to disappear, generally speaking. So yes, maybe some more map stuff. Yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. And the stream will be up on YouTube later today, so you can catch the beginning or the end or whatever part that you missed. Yeah, the boob spear was particularly brutal with the weird collision bugs on the wall. It usually takes several hours to process, so the video probably won't get posted until later tonight or early tomorrow, but it'll be up probably within a day. Yeah, if you like what you see, you can support us by purchasing a Wizard's Lizard. It's our game on Steam, and you can check it out at wizardslizard.com. You can also follow us on YouTube. Lost Decade Games is the username. Follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/lostdecadegames. And don't forget to subscribe to the Twitch channel and like the YouTube videos, and we will continue doing the Game Dev live stream. Once again, if you have any feedback, just head on over to our forum. It's forum.lostdecadegames.com. You can give us feedback on this show, on Lostcast, or just chit-chat with other game devs or people interested in Lizardy Wizards. So once again, thanks everybody for coming, and I will catch you next time.